although there are several Zen sects, the Soto sect and the Rinzai sect, and other sects also in Buddhism, in regard to the teaching of Buddha itself, in regard to the teaching itself of the Buddha, there is no need to make distinctions, no need to be concerned about distinctions between sects.
座禅を学ぶ者は、修行する人としてですね、仏道ということとか、ブッダということ、それから法ということが、まず第一に明確にしておく必要があります。
For those of us who are practicing the Buddha way, for those of us who are sitting zazen, there is a need above everything else to clarify such things as what is Buddha, what is Dharma, what is the Buddha way.
歴史上のブッダというのは皆様はよくご存知と思います。
I think that all of us here are familiar with the history of the original of the historical Buddha and the story or the history behind his life.
シャカムニ・ブッダ、いわゆる昔のインドの釈迦族から出た人格者であります。悟りを開いた人であります。
The original Buddha was Shakyamuni Buddha. He is the, what would you say? He is the esteemed descendant of the ancient family from India, the so-called Shaka clan or the Shaka family from India.
その個人が修行によって本当に悟りを開いた、目覚めたということからブッダになられたということです。
And because of this person, this individual called Shakyamuni, because he was actually able to, as we say, awaken or realize his true nature, because of that, he is called Buddha, the world honored one.
仏になられましてから、そのブッダがインドにおけるどのように法輪を転じたかということは興味深い話題です。
When the Buddha, the original Buddha, Shakyamuni, became Buddha, how did he teach the Buddha Dharma? How did he turn, in other words, how did he turn the wheel of the Dharma in his own country? This is a question of much interest to many people.
ブッダは観世音菩薩とか、あるいは地蔵菩薩とか、その他いろいろ菩薩に身を変えて修行を強化なさったということです。これはですね、仏として悟った人が、このいわゆる観世音、観音様になったり、お地蔵様になったりして、一切の衆生みんなを、悟りの世界に、導いたという意味です。
After awakening, after Shakyamuni awakened, he transformed into the forms of bodhisattva, several bodhisattvas, many different bodhisattvas. For example, Kanzeon Bosatsu, Kanon-san, or Jizo Bosatsu, and other bodhisattvas, and returned to the regular world to guide sentient beings. In other words, after he became awakened, he took the form of many different bodhisattvas in order to guide human beings, us humans, to awakening, to nirvana.
これを化身と言います。化身というのは、悟ったから、本当のものが分かる、本当のものが分かる人がそういう菩薩だとか地蔵様になって、一切衆生を救ったという意味で。
Koten Roshi uses the word keshin. Keshin ですか？
化身。
Keshin. And this means someone who has actually grasped for themselves, has actually grasped the truth, grasped reality as it is, and is able to, because of this grasping knowing the reality for himself, that he is able to guide sentient beings along the way.
一切衆生というのは、私たちが見たり聞いたり感じたり、現実の行為、無差別の姿、そのままを一切衆生と言います。
There's a term used, it's called all sentient beings. Issai Shujo is all sentient beings. And all sentient beings points to all of the activities of hearing and seeing, the activities of all of the senses functioning as they are in the present moment. This is the condition of thusness or suchness, of things just as they are, as they appear in reality. This is what is called sentient beings.
自分も含めて、またそれを発心とも言います。
This is also called the Dharma body. This condition or this state of thusness, things just as they are. And this is the Dharma body, the functioning of the Dharma body. And this is also our condition. This is we ourselves right now.
ということから、この歴史上の個人の釈迦はなくなりましたけれども、発心としてのブッダというものは永久になくならないわけです。
We are all part of this Dharma body. And accordingly, the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, the Buddha, he died. He has perished, died. But the Dharma body itself, the Dharma body of Buddha, is something that has no end.
ということは、法というものが、なくならないということなんです。
In other words, because it has no end, it is something that will never disappear.
したがって自分自身に目覚めた者、あるいは本当に自由になった人、または心から安心を得た人というのを仏と言います。
Therefore, someone who has awakened to their own true nature, someone who has attained total liberation, someone who has attained peace of mind for themselves, true peace of mind for themselves, is called Buddha.
そのブッダが説かれた教えはどういうことかと言いますと、そのブッダは全く衆生とすべてのものと自分というものは、仏になられた自分というのは全く等しいものであるということを言っております。
So what is referred to as the teaching of Buddha is the reality of all things and oneself. That this self who has become Buddha, has dropped off mind and body, as being one with all things in the universe, being one and the same with all things in the universe.
今日学ぶということは、自分自身、一切衆生のすべてが今そのまま仏であるということを自覚する。実際自分で証明をしてみるということがブッダの修行であります。
Therefore, Zen practice.
失礼、仏教の修行であります。
Zen practice, in other words, is awakening to the truth of oneself and all things now, just as they are Buddha. Buddhist practice, in other words, is to actually give proof that oneself gives actual proof to this fact or reality that all things are Buddha. And this is what our practice is.
人間においては仏性と言います。
And for this reality of all things being one, for man or for human beings, this is what is called Buddha nature.
仏性とは 一切のものですね。その一切のものを発祥とも言います。
This, for man, this is called Buddha nature. When oneself and all things, this gap or difference between oneself and all things becomes one. This is called Buddha nature. But for things themselves, for things that are not man, then it is called Dharma nature, when all things become one.
発祥というのは、例えば人間には6つの道具があります。現に、
ごめん、どうぞ続けて。いいですか？はい。
はい、
どうぞ続けてください。
はい。現に微絶真意ということです。
This Dharma nature is, for example, man or humans have these 6 tools, these 6 aggregates. I have eyes and nose, ears, tongue, body, and mind.
私たちが目に映るもの、一切の神羅万象、すべてのもの、これは全部法と言います。
And everything that our eyes see, all of nature, the entire universe, everything that the eyes see, the entire universe, this is all called Dharma. Everything that the eyes pick up in their sight, and all the 6 senses, actually, whatever they perceive, this is all called Dharma.
今のまま見えるものすべてが法です。
Everything that we see now, just as it is called Dharma.
それから耳に聞こえてくるもの、一切のものですね。
Then there are everything that the ears pick up, everything that the ear hears.
そのように舌で味わう甘いとか辛いとか酸っぱいとか、それから匂い、冷たい、熱いを感じる皮膚の感覚、それから心、いろんな想念、いろんな思いを心と言います。
Everything that heard by the ears, in the same way, everything that is tasted by the tongue, sweet and sour and salty. Then what is smelled, and the feelings of hot and cold, bodily sensations, and the mind with its various thoughts arising. Arising thoughts is called the mind. All of these things are Dharma.
これら妄想分別というようなものもすべて法のうちです。法の中のものです。
Therefore, all things, there's nothing that is outside the Dharma. All things are Dharma. And therefore, one can say delusion or discrimination, these kind of things are also within the Dharma.
それから人間のすべてのもの、私たち自身は一切衆生と同じように私たちも法そのものであります。
And therefore, all human beings also, without exception, all of us are the same as all other sentient beings. We too are the Dharma itself.
ですから、宇宙が広い、宇宙が限りなく広いと言いましても、私たちのそういう6根、6つの働きのほかに宇宙というものはないということを知っておいていただきたいと思います。
Therefore, even though the universe is expansive, boundless, without limit, the universe cannot be found. Even though it is expansive and boundless without limit, the universe cannot be found outside the functioning of these 6 senses. It's important that we realize this for ourselves.
ですから、 自分自身を解決するということは、一切のものが解決するということに等しいということです。
It is our present condition now, and therefore to resolve this matter of the self is the same as resolving everything in the universe.
この世界というものはいろんな差別ですね。差別の姿、相という姿によって成り立っております。
The world we live in is the world of distinctions, of differences.
その一つ一つのものには何も価値はありません。
In each and everything that arises in the universe has its own individuality. Everything is different, is distinguished. But in things themselves, they have no value in themselves.
そのものそのものの働きをしているということです。
They have no individual value as they are. Each and everything functions as it is according to conditions and circumstances.
他の働きを絶対に損なわない。他の働きに対して一つも邪魔にならない存在です。
Each and everything functions without interfering with other things, and each thing functions without hindering or being hindered by other things in the least.
そういう働きを保証と言います。
This functioning as it is, according to circumstances, is called Dharma Nature.
その中にありまして、衆生の中にあって人間だけの存在が別にあります。
Even within this total free functioning, all sentient beings are this Dharma nature. But human existence is somehow different.
衆生のうちですけれども、人間だけが別になります。
Humans are, of course, part of all sentient beings, but at the same time, they have a different existence, a different reality.
本来は、衆生の一つのものとして人というものは、こういう存在をしますから、本来は一切のものと一つになっていなければなりません。
Originally, or fundamentally speaking, human existence is included among the existence of all sentient beings, of all things. And it essentially, it must not be different. It must be one and the same with all things.
しかし、人間だけ生まれながらにして、人の持つ業というものがあります。
However, humans, when they are born with something that is called karma. They have a certain karma when they are born.
業によって自我というものが物と自分と距離を、作っているわけです。
It is because of this karma that the ego self and one's environment become separate. A gap or a distance manifests between oneself and one's surroundings.
自我によって本来一つのものを、ものと自分と離れる相対的な見方になっているわけです。
It is because of this ego self that in essence all things that are essentially one whole, inseparable. But because of the ego self, a split, a divergence, or a separation emerges.
その我というものは一切のものを自分の道具にしたいわけです。
And so this split or separation emerges and a self-object or dualistic point of view, a relative point of view arises. It is this ego self that wants to somehow put everything in one's own domain.
全部自分の道具にしたいという自我があります。
The self exists that wants to, in some way, put everything in order as it sees things for itself.
人の考えまでも自分の考えと同じようにしたいという考えがあります。
And this is true to the extent that the ego even wants others to think the same way that oneself thinks.
いわゆるそれが迷いの始めということです。
In Buddhism, this is what is called ignorance or delusion.
そういうものは仏教では。
そういうものを、仏教では無明とか煩悩とか言っております。ごめん、ちょっと一つ。
私もちょっと飛んでしまった。Even to the extent that the ego wants other people to think the way oneself thinks. In Buddhism, this is what is called ignorance or delusion.
だからそういうのが迷いの始めなんだというんですね。
In other words, this gap that is forming, this ego self that arising is what Buddha calls the beginning of delusion.
私たちの存在というものは本来一つのものでなければ、物と自分と人と人でも距離のないものだということです。
In this same way, our own existence too must be this oneness, this unity, this reality of no gap, this existence of no gap. Us and things, us and our environment, us and other people. This is something originally without a separation or a gap. No distance between the two.
距離のない存在のものということです。
And this is an existence. This is the existence, our existence without the gap, without a gap.
距離を作ってしまったというのは、ただ自分の自我というものが距離を作ったということなんです。
And the creation of this gap or the emergence of this gap, the formation of this gap means that it is the ego self that has created this gap, this difference.
したがって、物と自分と一体になれば迷いというものは即座に解決するんです。
Therefore, when things and oneself become one, when the gap disappears, then immediately delusion is resolved. Delusion falls away.
ですから、この自我というものの正体、我というものはどんなものであるかということを本当に見破りさえすれば、すべての悩みや問題から解放されるわけです。
Therefore, when one penetrates or sees through to what the real form of the ego really is, when we see through the reality of what the ego really is, then one is relieved or freed of all distress and suffering and doubts and problems.
この宇宙でもそうですし、人間でもそうですけれども、いつからそういうものが始まったということは全く確実にする人はいないわけです。
This is true not only for the universe, but also for individuals also, that absolutely no one has clarified the reality of when things first began, when things first started.
私たち人間、自分自身を考えても、自分というものはいつ生まれたか知っておられる人は一人もおりません。
For us human beings also, there is absolutely no one who knows when they were born.
ですから、自分の死を自分が死んだと自覚する人もいないわけです。
Therefore, one can say that there is absolutely no one who can say they know or aware or are aware when they die or pass away.
日本でもこの国でもそうですけれども、どんなに科学が発達しましても、人間の死というものをいまだに断定できないということです。
In Japan or Europe or America or anywhere else, no matter how advanced science has progressed, it's still unknown. We are still unable to determine the point of death.
いつ何をもって人は死ぬか、まだ断定できない状態であります。
It's still unknown how to determine or how to know when someone or something dies or perishes.
これはなぜかと言いますと、最初のスタートはないからです。
The reason that it's impossible to determine the point of death is because there is no beginning. Things have no beginning.
いつから始まったかということがないから、最初がないものですから終わりがないんです。
And because there is no beginning, then there cannot be an end.
このことは人でも物でもそうです。移り変わってるだけです。永久に移り変わっている。
This is true for this reality of no beginning and no end. Is true for both people, humans, and for things. Things simply undergo constant change. Things do not exist and undergo change. There's only change itself, endlessly undergoing constant change.
一つのものが移り変わっていくのではなく、移り変わっているものがそれ自体ということです。
It is not a matter of something existing and then it undergoes constant change, but there is only the reality of constant change itself.
ですから、最初もなければ終わりもないというのが本当の真相なんです。
Therefore, no beginning and no end is the true state or the true reality of all things as they are.
ですから、その終わりがないということが確実に自分が分かりますと、不安とか焦りというものが当然なくなるというわけです。
Therefore, one can say that because that when someone truly grasps the fact that there is no end or there is no extinction, then things like anxiety or uncertainty or doubt, these things will vanish. They'll go away naturally.
最初もなく終わりもない状態、それが私たちの現実なんです。
This state or reality of no beginning and no end is our present reality for each and every one of us now.
そうしますと、今の確かにある自分というものは何だったかということになる。
Then, if this is true, then what or who is this thing that we call the self that is certainly and without a doubt right here and now?
知るとか知らないということにかかわらず、あることは事実があるわけです。
Because regardless of knowing or not knowing, or understanding or not understanding, present reality is, in fact, things just as they are.
それを信じるとか信じないとか全く関係なくあるということです。
And this has absolutely no relationship to believing in or not believing, or knowing or not knowing.
人類で一番先に疑問を持たれた人、 全くわからないままにあるということに疑問を持たれて修行を始めた人が釈迦牟尼仏ということです。
The first person to raise this great doubt that all things manifest without our knowing it, and to resolve this doubt or this matter through religious practice or shugyo, the first person to do this or to grasp this reality was Shakyamuni Buddha.
その知らず知らずにあるものの実態を見破られた、鉄拳されたのが釈迦牟尼仏です。
And it was the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, who was able to penetrate the reality that things come into existence without, do you say, or before our knowing, before our knowing it. ごめんなさい。
それが自分だと思っていた自分というものはシンボルであったというんです。
And seeing into this reality, he was able to see that what we thought or imagined to be me, to be the self, to be the I or me, that this I or me that we call ourselves was only a symbol or a point of reference.
ですから本来の永久になくならない自分と今現在自分だと思っているシンボルとの生活と2つあるわけです。
But we don't realize this eternal self that has no beginning and end. We don't realize that it is our true nature because this I or me, this symbol of a self that we think or imagine to be ourselves, this I or me, the ego self, it gets in the way. It won't let us
シ
see
ンボ
this
ルの、
reality. はい、どうぞ。
シンボルの生活と本来の自分との生活と2つありますから、この本来の自分というのは分かりません。
We don't realize this boundless or true selves because we want to recognize this ego self.
シンボルの生活が本来の自分だと思っているからそれでは絶対に満足ができないということです。
And we think that this I or me, this symbol, is our true selves, but this mistaken view will never allow us to find peace of mind or satisfaction or contentment.
シンボルという自分というものを忘れることによって本来のいわゆる仏性というのが出てくるわけです。
And by forgetting this small, this symbol of a self, this ego self, the original or the true self manifests. In other words, our Buddha nature becomes clear. It is clarified. It emerges.
その仏性を私たちがどうしても持っているだけではいけません。それを働かせるために禅の修行をするわけです。
Even though we are all originally Buddha, it is not enough just to know the fact that we inherently possess Buddha nature, our original nature. In order to be able to realize and utilize it, we have to do Zen practice.
仏性の働きというのはどういうものであるかと言いますと、それを大慈悲心と言います。
This activity or working of Buddha nature is manifest in great compassion to relieve the suffering of all human beings.
何とかして迷っている人を救ってあげなければならないという慈悲心と言います。
This is the great compassion to somehow relieve the suffering of those who are troubled and confused.
仏教の言葉で言いますと、迷いを転じて悟りを開かす、天命介護と言います。
難しいこと。In other words, in the words of the Buddha, this is to relieve the suffering of all troubled and confused people, is to turn delusion into enlightenment.
先ほど申し上げましたように、ものには発祥としてのそれぞれの働きがあります。
As I just said previously, the Buddha nature of all manifold things, of all things, manifests according to the abilities or the capabilities of each thing, the capacity of each thing.
人間としての仏性の働きというものは、ものが自然に働きをしているように、知らず知らずのうちに、衆生のために迷っている人、不幸の人を幸せにしてあげなければならないという、そのことを仏性と言います。
In humans, in man, the activity or working of Buddha nature is this natural, or unbeknown, spontaneous activity or action to turn the suffering and misfortune of sentient beings into contentment, into their own contentment and peace of mind. This is the working of Buddha nature.
それがいわゆる発性と同じ同格で仏性というものの働きが出てくるわけです。
And this is the working or the function of Buddha nature and of Dharma nature. The two are both equal, and they correspond to one another.
そこで初めて人としての存在が衆生の一つとして認められるということです。
And it is said that this is where man's existence is, you say, recognized as a member of the family of sentient beings, where the function of Buddha nature and of Dharma, where the activity of the Buddha nature is the unknown and natural action to turn the suffering and misfortune of sentient beings into contentment and peace of mind.
特に曹洞宗永平寺、永平道元の宗派ですけれども、そのまま、今のままというのをやかましく言います。
In the Soto sect, the sect of Dogen Zenji, Eihei Dogen, the teaching of things as they are, the teaching of things as the things themselves, suchness or thusness. This is the center of the teaching of the Soto sect.
なぜ今のままでよろしいかということですね。
And why is the teaching of suchness, of things as they are, why is this so important?
人間の考えというのは過去と未来のことしか考えられません。
Man's thinking man's thinking man can only think of past and future. Man's ability to think only includes past and future.
これは修行において必要なことです。
This is, of course, necessary in regard to our own religious practice. It's a necessary and important point.
過去のことと未来のことは考えられますけれども、現在のことがどんなに考えを巡らしても、今のことは考えられないということです。
What this points to is that we are able to think about the past and the future, which is an important and necessary thing. But no matter how hard we try, no matter how hard we may try, it is impossible to think of the present. It's impossible to think the present moment.
今というものの存在というのは、それほど一切のものと距離がないことです。
This is the character of the present moment. It means that we are so intimate with the present moment as it is, that there is no gap or space between we ourselves and the present moment now. They're one. We are one with the present moment.
認識以前ということです。
In other words, it is before ninchiki. He uses the word ninchiki, and ninchiki is translated to cognizance, our own consciousness or ability to know or understand or to be conscious of the present moment. It is before our consciousness of the present moment arises that the present moment is already present.
認識以前が今の存在ということです。
In regard to both space and time, the present manifests before the perception of the present arises.
ですから一切のものと初めてそこで人とすべての衆生と平等になるということです。
The present exists before perception and consciousness. Therefore, it is here that for the first time that a person, that we ourselves become or are one with our surroundings here in the present, this present moment right now, where there is no ego self, there's no space or gap for the ego self to emerge, and where we are on equal footing, where we are one with all sentient beings.
そういうものが認識と観念を起こすというのは、本来の自分ではなくて、あくまでもシンボルとしての自分だけがそういう認識とか観念とかを起こしているわけです。
And so it is not the true self, it is not the true self or our true nature that understands or conceptualizes. It is the ego self, this me, this marker or symbol, this point of reference of the self that raises perception and conceptual thought.
ですから禅の修行によって一度その認識とか観念以前の自分に戻りますと、真実の自己というものが発見されるわけです。
Therefore, through our Zen practice, through our practice of Zazen, we return to the self before perception or understanding or before conceptual thought arises. Then we are able to discover our true selves, our true nature.
これは私が今ここで発見した話ではなく、私の師匠もそうだったし、またその師匠もそうだったということです。ですから必ずそうなるんです。
This is what all of the Buddhas and ancestors personally discovered for themselves. And this is what not only what I discovered for myself, it is something that my teacher and my teacher's teacher and the teachers before him all awakened to. Without any doubt, they all awakened to their own true natures. Let's see. Each one of them gave proof to the true form of the self before perception, consciousness, or cognizance arises.
認識以前の自分に戻ったということが証明がなければいけないということです。
Each of them gave, I'm sorry, I got ahead of Roshi here. Each of them, they all gave proof to the reality, to the true form of the self before perception arises. It is something that we have to prove, awaken to for ourselves.
世界にはたくさんの宗教がありますけれども、本当にそういうことが人間以前になったという、そういう証明があるというのは、禅だけにしかありません。
There is a world of no self, no personal self. There are many, many different religions in the world, but only in Zazen or only in Zen do you find this matter of proof or awakening to the reality, awakening to the reality of no self, awakening to this reality of no self for ourselves, to prove it for ourselves. There's only in Zen practice is there this kind of religious practice.
このことは禅といろいろあります宗教の徹底的な相違と言っても言い過ぎではありません。
Here is the fundamental difference between Zen and all other religions.
このことがない限り、私が自由になりました、私が安心しましたと言っても、言うことは誰でも言ってますけれども、しかしそういうことも因果証明と言いますけれども、そういうこともだんだんと問題にする人が亡くなりました。これはいらんかな
？Without this proof, anyone can just say that I've attained liberation and peace of mind. But there is this between the master and disciple, this recognition, this piece of paper called Inkashome that one gives proof or realization to a disciple that he has awakened. ちょっと、
え
ちょっと
イン
通訳しましたけれども、ごめん。
印花証明ってどういうふうに言ってる？
インカ証明は、まあ、インカともう直訳ですね。インカというですね。
印花と。
インカ証明。なんか英語になっているみたいですね。
その人が仏になったという証明書。
そうですね、そういう、私は説明してないんですけども、ちょっと説明しましょうか。
はい、ちょっと説明してあげて。それがないと善にはならないということ。
はい。Koten Roshi used this word Inka Shome. Perhaps some of you have heard this word. And it's this personal recognition from a master to a disciple that they have awakened to the true self, that they have dropped off body and mind. And this is a recognition personally from the master to the disciple that this has taken place. But these days, in the Soto sect, perhaps in other sects also, that this form of Inka Shome, of personal recognition, is something that hasn't been passed down to present generations, and so it's something in the Zen sect that's absolutely necessary, Koten Roshi says, but now it's being ignored or not value placed on it as much as before. So without this personal recognition from the master to the disciple, anybody can just say that yes, I attained true peace of mind, that I've dropped off, I have no ego.
それが皆さんがご存知のように、インドから中国、中国から日本、そのインドから中国に教えを、印花証明としての教えを、もたらしたのが菩提ダルマ大師です。
And so the Dharma, the true Dharma, was passed from Shakyamuni Buddha from India, passed on to China, and then passed on to Japan. And as you know, it was Bodhidharma who transmitted the Dharma, the true Dharma, from India to China.
そういうこの中国から日本に渡ってきまして、わずかながら今日本にその印花証明が残っています。
And the true Dharma has been passed from China to Japan, but it's only been it's always been passed by this very thin thread, where it's just there aren't many people who truly awaken to pass it along to a disciple, or there aren't too many disciples who truly awaken to receive from their masters. These are the present circumstances of the Dharma currently.
ですからこの実証がありませんと、何が本当で何が間違いであるかということがはっきりと言えないということです。
But without this personal proof, then it's impossible to say what the true Dharma really is.
だからこの道をどうしてもなくすこともできないことですし、法としては確かにそのままでいいに違いありません。この宝は手をつけようもないものです。法としては確かにそうです。しかし人としてどうしても法と人と離れておる。
It's necessary for us ourselves to truly awaken and to transmit the Dharma to future generations. Without this transmission, no one will know the real Dharma, the true Dharma, what the true Dharma is, and what is mistaken. They won't be able to tell the difference. Therefore, we must not allow the Buddha way, to disappear. In regard to the Dharma itself, everything is full and complete, exactly as it is. All things are the Buddha Dharma. There's no mistake about this. But if there's no person, but there has to be a person who can transmit this to further generations. The jewel of the teaching cannot be altered. It's the Dharma.
離れているというのはいくら私がそのものでいいと言っても、皆さんの方でこんなもんはなぜ仏か、なぜこれが自由や安心した状態かということに疑いを持たれるに違いありません。そこで初めて法と自分と一つに一体にならなければならないという修行が必要なってくるわけです。
Let's see. The true Dharma will never disappear. However, with regard to man, an inevitable gap or divergence or space between a person and the Dharma arises when the ego self emerges. Because of this difference, this gap, just because someone might explain the teaching of the Dharma, there will be an unavoidable, because there is a difference, then just because someone explains the teaching of the Dharma, there will always be an unavoidable doubt about why the teaching is true, why our present condition is already the condition of peace of mind in reality as it is. If we haven't truly awakened, we will not be able to, with confidence and clarity, be able to teach people that we are already one with things as they are. And it is here where the need arises, that we must awaken to the Dharma and man, where we and the Dharma become one, awaken to this reality. And the path or practice of the Dharma and man becoming one is the way of Zen.
それを一体とすべく修行をする道、それを禅の道と言います。
And this path or practice of Dharma and man becoming one, becoming the way. This is the path or the way of Zazen.
ということが初めてドイツに行った時に設計老師が、提唱された一部でございます。
This is one of the teishos, the talks that Sekkei Roshi, Arada Sekkei Roshi gave on one of his first trips to Europe when he was giving sessions there that Koten Roshi also attended.